Hey everyone, welcome to Classy Tech. What you're seeing is the Alienware QD OLED, model number AW3423DW monitor. And I had actually ordered this and paid for it myself. Was supposed to be here midweek, and due to Dell's, let's just say, not so perfect launch strategy, um, mine, along with a bunch of other orders for the monitor, got canceled, and now if you order, it's not due until June. So I was going to do a much more in-depth video, probably even a live stream of it, but instead, a viewer who happens to be pretty local to me did manage to get one and had me calibrate it. So he was nice enough to let me do some measurements and spend some time with it and capture a little bit of footage here to do a video. So there's not going to be a whole lot of footage of the screen of the monitor. However, there's a lot of measurements, benchmarks, and calibration info and stuff to talk about. So that's mostly what this is going to be. The main thing I'm missing out on is I forgot to put the bag with my input lag tester in my stuff, so I don't have input lag numbers. However, that said, it's an OLED, it's instant pixel response times, and I didn't feel anything off with the input lag, so I'm sure it's very low, so shouldn't be a concern. I'm sure Hardware Unboxed will go far more in depth in that kind of stuff, so that's for them. What I uncovered was much more on the calibration side and just the general use of the monitor, and also some traits of the QD OLED. So let's start first with white. So you may have been hearing about QD OLED and having pure white and all this stuff. Don't believe that marketing mumbo jumbo crap. At D65, which this monitor ships very, very close to D65 in the custom picture mode preset, it does not look like D65 is supposed to look like due to metamerism. So it will need an alternate white point, which I did have my other monitor that is a non-wide color gamut LCD that doesn't suffer from metamerism with me, so that I could match. Now, due to the very weird way that Dell has set up the controls on this monitor, there was no way to do any matching involving actual content. It was only matching just white, and I'll explain that in a minute. But doing so, I did end up with a specific alternate white point coordinate. That coordinate happened to be an x-axis of 0.318 and a y-axis of 0.317. Very weird sounding, I get it, but that was as close as I could get the white to match my monitor, which has a 0.1 delta error of D65 on white. And the matching was done at 65 nits and made sure there's no clipping and etc. So that out of the way, the monitor still is an OLED, so it still looks really good. It also does achieve over 1,000 nits in highlights, and is, even in full screen brightness, around 200 nits before calibration, around 150 after in HDR. So aside from a few other issues that I'll get into, it's still really good as far as monitors go, because most monitors are either VA or IPS panels, and they have their own handful of issues, and most of the good monitors are IPS, which means they have crappy black levels, and the monitor market's just not very good. And the OLEDs out there are very expensive unless you get a 48 or 42 inch LG. As you can see here, the uniformity is pretty good overall, all things considered, for a monitor. Again, black levels are black, except there is a coating on the screen. Now, it's a mild anti-glare coating when the lights are off. You can pretty much not tell it's there. But when lights are hitting the screen, it becomes blatantly obvious, and it also turns those lights red. So there's like a red lifted black look to dark areas when there's light hitting the screen. So that may be a deal breaker for some, especially for it being an OLED. However, if you can control the light and the light doesn't hit the screen directly, then that's not an issue. So after doing the white balance in the custom mode, this is how it looks, and there's no gamma control in custom mode. That's only in the creator mode. So it's stuck at a average 2.0 gamma, and above black up to about 20 to 25 IRE is significantly lifted, and there's nothing you can do about that except for 1D LUT, but even that doesn't help very much. So this brings me to one of my biggest issues with this monitor. So here is the color checker in the creator picture mode, but the problem with creator picture mode is it only lets you make changes to gamma, which don't actually track how those settings say they do. No surprise there. And it lets you switch between sRGB and DCI-P3. That's it. No color adjustment, no white adjustment. If you use custom mode, you get the white adjustment, nothing else. If you use game mode, you get the color adjustment, nothing else. I just don't understand the point of all of that. So in sRGB mode, the color errors are actually really good. It's a little low on the overall gamut coverage, but that can be fixed a little bit. And as you go into DCI-P3, then your color errors are exponential because everything's blown out too much. And so that means if you use custom mode so that you can change the white point, then you're stuck in DCI-P3 if you don't have external software or calibration software or anything like that to change it. So then you're going to be switching your picture modes between creator for SDR and custom for HDR, but if you want to change the white point, you can only do that in custom, not creative. And then if you wanted to change gamma, you can't do that in custom. So pretty much, if you're looking at this monitor, expect to add a calibration if you care about accuracy at all. And the other issue to that is I was actually surprised that the monitor does show up in Calman Ultimate, and it does connect for DDC control, and it does do a 1D LUT upload, but the 3D LUT wasn't working. I don't know if it's just locked out. I don't know if it's just because it's so early. I don't know if Calman would need an update for full support of the monitor. And then we were also using Client 3 on the client's desktop, and I'm using Ultimate on my laptop, and kept running into countless bugs and issues. And he had Windows 11, so I don't know if there's an issue with Client 3 and Windows 11 and this monitor or some combination, but spent a couple of hours trying to figure out workarounds to get around all of this to even do an ICC profile, and it just was a lot that most people aren't going to go through. And this image is the out-of-the-box creator measurement, and you can see with the gamma set to 2.6, it's actually an average of closer to 2.3, and it makes like a smiley face shape. Near black is lifted. It's just kind of all over the place. And now for the color gamut, again, and this is game mode, and again, there's no selection of which color space you want to be in, so it defaults to DCI-P3, which means you're going to have way oversaturated colors in game mode. And so please try to keep in mind I'm trying to do this review from the perspective of average person who doesn't get it calibrated, as well as the enthusiast who will or might. And so there's a lot of this back and forth because this monitor really needs a calibration to be good. But that said, people who don't care about calibration will probably think that it's very good anyway, just because, again, OLED, pure blacks, good brightness, very explosive colors, especially if you're in one of these P3 modes, like it's going to really turn everything neon explosive color in your SDR content, and some people like that. So now in your BT2020 gamut, it's about 80% as expected. Dynamic range, which is over 100% white into the extended range. No clipping, looks really good. This is at 75 on the brightness control, which was 157 nits in your 10% window and SDR, and then at 100 brightness, that went up to 210. And this was in the custom picture mode, which is the one that's very, very close to D65 out of the box. And again, after calibration, it does drop a little bit because you do have to pull some green and blue out of it if you use a alternate white point so that it looks correct. Now going into HDR, there's two modes. There's your 1000 nit, which is what this is. So on the left side you see small windows, and then it goes down as the window size gets larger. And then there's the 400 nit mode, which has less difference between a bright highlight and a full screen size. However, the full screen size isn't that much different than the 1000 nit mode, and then this just kills your highlights in HDR games and movies or whatever. So I absolutely would recommend just sticking to the 1000 nit mode, because the difference between 1000 nit and 400 nit modes at 100% window is very small. So just go ahead and use the 1000. Now the color checker here is the creator mode after calibration, and you can see it's very good. Nothing really to complain about here. And even before calibration, the creator mode in sRGB, like, the colors are really good. The only thing that really needs correcting is white, but you need the 1D LUT to do that for the creator mode. So now we go into the HDR mode, and you can see the measurement without luminance is a bit red, but these charts are looking for D65, as this was just an out-of-the-box measurement suite that I did before finding out about the alternate white point. So in reality, it's actually too green, and if green was lower, then it would be pretty good. So this is the 1000 mode, and then I'll show you the 400 mode. Again, very similar, and at a 10% window, which is what this is measured at, the brightness is roughly the same between the two, but you can see overall the tracking here is pretty good. That big dip that you see at 65, that's normal. That's where the tone mapping kicks in. EOTF tracks very well. Pretty much what you would want to see here. So this is what the SPD looks like when measured with the i1 Pro 3, which is a 10 nanometer spectro. You can see roughly 80 nanometers of width for the colors, and very good separation between blue, green, and red. Alright, so before I go into more of these, I do want to point out that I will have a stream, very likely this coming Tuesday, to talk more thoughts about QD OLED specifically, and the technology behind it, and upcoming Sony A95K TVs that will be using it, how I expect this to translate to that, and so on. Here's the after calibration. The 1D LUT came out really good, except that bottom end is too bright. Again, that's just how it worked out. Nothing you can really do about that. So overall, it's still a very good display as far as monitors go. The issue for me is if you have room for a 42-inch C2 or a 48-inch C2, C1, C10, whatever, that is what I would go with for most people, because most people aren't going to get it calibrated. It's also going to be a little more flexible, a little more accurate, and have correct color spaces for your modes and everything. And yes, this display has basically full coverage of DCI-P3, but so do the WRGB OLEDs. It's when you get into BT2020 that this is about 10% higher, but the problem is all the HDR content, or the overwhelming majority of it, is done in DCI-P3 in a BT2020 container, so it's not being used yet. So QD OLED is kind of the chicken and the egg scenario here, where there's no content that really needs that extra color gamut because the content just isn't there yet. So here on this final screen, you can see the post calibration after the ICC profile and the 1D LUT. It turned out really good. That's really all there is to say. Again, with calibration, it can be really good. Without calibration, it's kind of, do you care? Because if you do, then I would look at something else. If you don't, then go for it, because again, the monitor space is really crappy, and if you don't want the crappy blacks of an IPS and you can't fit a larger LG OLED, then this is really the only decent affordable choice. And now I'm sure someone's going to bring up white subpixel versus no white subpixel, color volume, and all that, and I can tell you, looking at the game content and the content that I saw on it, it looks really good, but so does a regular LG OLED or Sony OLED. Like, the difference is barely anything at all. So maybe in the brightest of bright color highlights you'll see a little bit of a difference, but that's about it. And for most people, you're not going to have them side by side. And if they're not side by side, that's the only time you're gonna really see that difference. Again, there's just a little bit of color purity difference, but right now there's too many other growing pains that QD OLED, and specifically this Alienware monitor, is going to have to go through. And after that happens and the content starts to take advantage of more than just P3 color space, then that's where QD OLED will really start to walk away from WRGB OLED, but that's going to be quite a bit of time from now. So I wouldn't rush out and worry about it. So all that said, I thank you all for watching. I hope to see you on the live stream on Tuesday, and bring your questions about QD OLED or this monitor there, and I hope you all have a good one. Thanks.